Hello, this is Dick Smackman and I work for Leiden University in the Netherlands, and this is
Patrick Heinrich. I work for Ca' Foscari University in Venice.
And we edited a book called Urban Sociolinguistics, The City as a Linguistic Process and Experience. And in this video we're going to pick some questions from this this box, and it's going to be a surprise who gets which question, and then we answer it.
We try our best.
You will find out how wonderful this book is.
You want to try the first question, Dick?
Yes. My favorite question. What are the most lively aspects in this book? The most lively aspects in the book are that we describe how people talk, but to do that the book actually goes to a supermarket and to a neighborhood in the Netherlands and a neighborhood in London, and the book describes exactly what people actually say, and the analysis by the author. And it also has pictures of linguistic landscapes which make the book all the more lively, and I actually think that generally the style in which it's written is lively in itself.
Yeah, very good.
So, next question for you.
Let's have a look. Has social linguistics not always been urban? Why a new book on urban social linguistics? Depends. Western linguistics has always been urban, but for instance Japanese social linguistics has not.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese social linguistics was preoccupied with language modernization, which meant bringing city language to rural people. And cities have changed dramatically over our lifetimes. This is probably the first idea we had in creating this book, is how much the cities we knew had changed. So we thought that going back to the city, starting with the city and doing justice to the city as it is today would be a very good idea. So it might have been urban, in lots of cultures and contexts, but it has also changed, and not every social linguistic tradition has been urban. And I should add that we have a number of cases in that book which are non-dominant social linguistic settings, such as Cairo or Dubai or Tokyo. And so going there to the city is very, very instructive for us as social linguists.
And the world has changed. As we write in the book that maybe in the 1960s you could go into a department store and have very clear expectations as to what people speak. But nowadays, in that same department store, you will have no idea what people speak. And also they might change their language very often just to suit the situation of variation, because people are so different from each other nowadays. Do you remember the original idea of this book? Vaguely. The original idea it sort of grew naturally from the idea that we should, after the first book we edited, Globalizing Sociolinguistics, it's this book but mint, we wanted to continue that tradition of trying to find out how mainstream sociolinguistics could be maybe improved, and we wanted to add something to that. And to achieve that, we went back to the original idea of Western sociolinguistics, and that was the city, and it sort of naturally grew from there, I remember.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you remember more than that?
The strong idea was really wanting to do a second book, because the first we thought, before it was published, that it would be, a good book, that it would be, an interesting book for many people, and wanting to expand, not stopping with globalizing social linguistics, but at the same time we needed an additional idea, because globalizing social linguistics was just going to non-dominant cases and going from these cases back to theory and said, look, can't we modify, can't we be more precise in theory? And of course we could do that, on 10 book length, we could continue for that forever, but we choose focus to add, to do something more than the first book. And then we thought that cities would be a good place to start, because as we said, cities are changing, and not every sociolinguistic tradition has been urban.
No.
And you very early on said we should study cities as independent sociolinguistic systems. Just forget about the nation state they're located in, because there's so much diversity. And I think all of this slowly focalized in this idea that we should look at cities, and the idea of language ecology was very, very strong, to see all these functional connections that there are between languages and speakers and how they do things in the city.
And what cities at some level have in common, although they are culturally and geographically enormously far apart.
Yeah, one idea was very early on that a person from a big city like London might feel more at home in a big city like Tokyo than they might feel in the very close rural neighborhoods around London.
Yeah.
So that there is something that cities share.
Yeah.
So let's see. Who do you think can profit from reading the book? Well, I think the initial idea to do this book is based on Dick teaching sociolinguistics at Leiden for many years, the same course to various students over and over again, and just a sort of fatigue with discussing over and over the same cases. So the classical studies, of Glasgow and New York, and in social network analysis and department stores. The world is vast, and there's different patterns of urbanization. Language does different things to people in different places. So the initial idea that we also carried on in this book was to go to new places and see what local sociolinguists would tell us. And upon that, be more fine-grained, be more detailed, be more aware of what we actually have at hand and what we do not have at hand. And as a matter of fact, this book is full of surprises, and that was the big fun in editing it, that there was a lot of discovery where I thought, oh look, I wouldn't think, for instance, that the way you tie your shoes has to do with the way you talk.
Yeah.
And
that it defines meaning, which area you come from, how you refer to something.
Yeah.
In an ethnolect.
And the idea also that physical things have agencies is also something that comes in very nicely in our book, that some conversation take place in a neighborhood in Sydney just because there's a fridge there. So, it breaks our long-standing assumptions that a fridge where frozen fish is sold. And that just, becomes a locus of intercultural encounters where people really struggle to get their message across. Yeah. And it just happens there, and it happens in the way it is because there is a physical object. So there's tons of surprises if you really go out with what we should do. If we want to be like, a general science of language, we should be really, really general and look for interesting cases and be prepared to find stuff that is unexpected. Yeah. And so this is a kind of urge to go and find these unexpected places and encounters, and to think then, what is it actually that we know about, sociolinguistics?
What I personally found a big surprise is the two brothers in London who were raised in the same house, obviously, and they lived in the same street. And the chapter says they even married similar wives, yet they had personality differences. They were different personality-wise, and one of them had a traumatic experience, and their language was very, very different. So originally the idea would have been that they would speak the same language, but something in their personality or in that special experience, that big impact experience, change their language. And those kinds of explanations you never see in mainstream introductions to of the field. You only see them in very well hidden articles. They don't end up in books that try and draw a more general picture.
Yeah, and the conclusion is far-reaching because it says that personal experience truly shape you. They shape you just as much as class background does, as ethnic background does, as education does. So we should be prepared to find, you know, much more richer aspects defining the way that people speak.
And individualize.
Yeah.
So look at the individual.
Yeah. It's your turn.
My turn. How can a city be an experience and how can it be a process? And both at the same time. Can I? Can you answer that question?
Yeah. I'm responsible for the subtitles, so Dick is always is responsible for the color of these books, and I'm responsible for the subtitles. And it changed title quite frequently. Urban Sociolinguistics somehow suggested itself at one point, and then it was, what do we contribute to urban sociolinguistics? And so there's two ideas. One is as a linguistic process, and that was actually, I think, the first idea that we had when we started writing the book proposal. We were reading into city studies, and we understand that cities are the result of the history. And so we actually asked every individual author to give us like a little background, historical background, how the city evolved also from a linguistic aspect. So big cities, and we deal with big cities there, are cities who are seeing lots of migration. And we know that cities work in a way in assimilating people, but it's never total assimilation. They leave traces. And they leave traces because language has functions. And even if it changes, it gets assimilated, whatever works somehow leaves a trace. And understanding that is meant, I think, in my idea was always the city as a linguistic process. Also, we divide between cities in the global south and in the global north. So we're dealing with global cities in the north and world cities in the south. And we're seeing that they evolve quite differently. But we also see that cities in the global north, places like London, like Paris, like Tokyo that we discussed there, in the past were very similar like they are today in Mexico City or Sao Paulo. So you see processes and similarities, but they are not endless. It does not mean that a place like Sao Paulo or a place like Mexico City will have the same developments as Tokyo had, because they have certain developments, but now we have these world